When most people hear of Silent Hill, they picture foggy American streets
Silent Hill.
and monsters.
No! My God!
But this entry flips all on its head. We're in the 1960s rural Japan now, in a small town called Ebisugaoka. And instead of faceless nurses, there's a secretive foxman, whole rituals, and a girl called
Hinako.
Before we go any deeper, hi, I'm Tai. I've been studying psychology in university for the past 4 years. I am still a student, but I want to bring all the knowledge that I've built over these years into a series that I love. So, in this video, I'll be using that background to dig into Silent Hill's world, setting, folklore, symbolism, and endings to show how the horror isn't something you see. It's something that reflects how our minds actually work. Before we can start pulling this game apart psychologically, we need to set the stage. It's the 1960s rural Japan, a period when cities were modernizing fast, but out on the countryside, old traditions still had real power. Things like arranged marriages and ceremonies that mixed religion, folklore, and social control weren't just stories, they were everyday life. Psychologists have been looking at this kind of environment for decades. Henry Tashfel, or however you pronounce that, came up with something called social identity theory. Basically, who you think you are is built out of the groups you belong to. In a small close community like Ebisugaoka, that identity is not a choice, it's handed to you. Another researcher, Muzaffar Sharif, showed how group norms form and harden. In his famous Robber's Cave experiment, showed how kids invented rules and loyalties in just a few days. Now imagine that not as a summer camp, but as your whole life. A town where rituals, family names, and expectations have been shaping you since birth. Erik Erikson talked about what he called identity foreclosure, when a young person's role gets decided before they had a chance to figure themselves out. That's exactly the position characters like Hinako are in. Her path is already written, and stepping off of it feels like betraying everything. Murray Bowen's family system theory explains how tightly bound families and communities can be trapped in rigid roles. When the system is that rigid, breaking free isn't just rebellion, it's a psychological crisis. All of this isn't just to look super academic or ooh, look at me, I'm so smart. It's a way of looking at Silent Hill F in a more scientific and grounded way to show what happens when group identity and family pressure become the psychological horror. Let's finally zoom in on a game and focus on our main character, Hinako. To really understand her, we're going to start with her own words. The game gives us a journal full of her own thoughts about herself and the other people around her. And that's the perfect place to hear her voice before we even start analyzing what's happening to her. Hinako's own journal gives us a clear psychological portrait if you know how to read it. She starts by minimizing herself, framing her life as ordinary and unremarkable. In a collectivist high control environment, that kind of self-effacement is normalized. People internalize modesty to avoid standing out, which is something still present in Japanese culture. At the same time, she signals resistance. She writes that she's stubborn and hates other people deciding for her. This is a classical psychological reactance. The more a system tries to control someone, the more they push back. But she also mentions regretting her decisions, which is a hallmark of a young person in identity foreclosure, pushed into a role, rebelling, but without the scaffolding to build a new identity safely. Then comes a split. She says there are two Hinakos now, and that it feels like an alien is taking over. That isn't just a creepy line. It's a direct expression of self-fragmentation under prolonged stress. The person she was versus the person the ritual and the town are forcing her to become. In Bowen's family system terms, instead of developing her own identity, she's carrying the weight of her family and community expectations, and that pressure is starting to reshape her from the inside out. We cannot leave the Foxman and its meaning behind. He isn't just a cool enemy design, he is central to understanding everything that happens to Hinako. In Japanese myth, the fox, or kitsune, means a shapeshifter, sometimes a guardian, spirit, trickster, or a possessor. The Foxman promises power, protection, and escape, but every step with him erodes her autonomy. The rituals themselves aren't just gross set pieces, they are a visual language of what's happening to Hinako on the inside. When they cut her arm off, isn't just gore, it's a symbolic violation of her bodily autonomy. It's a ritual saying your body is no longer yours. We decide what happens to it. The mask isn't just creepy cosplay. In folklore, masks hide your true face and signal a new role. Putting a fox mask on Hinako while cutting her face is the game's way of showing her forced identity replacement, destroying the old face and and giving her her new one that belongs to the Foxman. And that brand with the hot metal, that's ownership. In a literal sense, it marks her body, a burn that says, this is who you are now. Together, these rituals show a total transfer of self. Cut off the old will, destroy the face, and burn in a new identity. I can't leave this part of the story without mentioning a video I saw that left me baffled. This guy managed to turn a 1960s Japanese folk horror story into a tech talk about birth rates and global conspiracies. It's just fucking wild. If forcing a woman into marriage is base and red-pilled, then keep living in your bubble, dude. But calling a game bad because you can't for a second get out of your own reality and understand where this game is in history, just congrats. You missed the fucking point. As I pointed out earlier, this game is about coerced identity told through like Japanese folklore stories. But let me put like into a language that maybe you can understand, if that's like too hard to understand. Imagine your whole family forced you to marry this like big titty goth baddie, but you had to dress like a twink fanboy. This is basically what's happening. Your crusher wouldn't be really about the marriage itself, it would be about being shoved into a role that erases who you are. Or maybe not, you know, you will never know. But moving on. Up until now, we've been looking at what was done to Hinako, but Silent Hill F also shows what happens inside of her. There isn't just one Hinako in the story. There is the normal Hinako we see in town and the fox Hinako we see in the dream world. This isn't just a gameplay gimmick, it's the game visualizing a split self. In psychology, there's a whole tradition around this. Erickson called the identity diffusion, when you can't form a stable sense of self under pressure. Bowen talked about self-differentiation, how when dysfunctional families, a self can fragment into roles you're forced to play. Trauma research talks about dissociation, you might be familiar with this, where a part of you splits off to survive. The fox Hinako is a part of her that accepted the bargain, and normal Hinako is a core that still wants to choose. The normal ending isn't a single cutscene, it's a slow collapse. First, you see Hinako's friends lying dead. It isn't just gore, it's a death of her social identity. All the people she built her teenage self around are gone, and the community that gave her belonging is stripped away first. Then, you fight the monstrous versions of her dad and mom. These aren't random bosses, they are ritualized parents. Killing them in a dream world is Hinako rejecting the roles they forced on her, but it also leaves her cut from her origin. Next comes the turning point. White Hinako, the perfect ritual bride, literally murders normal Hinako in front of her sister. This is the moment the complained identity takes over completely, and her last link to her family becomes a witness rather than a rescuer. Finally, she comes home, but the rejection isn't literal. It's her psyche replaying the fear that without obedience, she has no place to belong. The family that wants to find her now exiles her from herself. The cutscene of Fox Hinako and White Hinako crushing her head show that both identities, obedient bride and fox-powered mask, annihilate what's left of her core self. The twist reveals not her death, but her psychosis. Under the influence of the red capsules, Hinako murders the wedding guests, then dissociates, transforming the killings into ritual versions that her fractured psyche can survive. And what Silent Hill F turns into horror is something psychiatry has already documented. A report on forced marriages found victims commonly experience depressed mood, self-harm, isolation, guilt, and suicidal thoughts. Exactly what we see in Hinako's collapse. The paper describes how many are trapped in a cycle of abuse and feel forced to become someone else to survive. The parallels are almost one-to-one. The ritual marriage, the split identities, and the suicidal spiral. The game isn't exaggerating, it's externalizing a real psychological pattern using folklore instead of medical language. Before we move to the other endings, there's one small detail that's easy to miss, but it says a lot about how Silent Hill F visualizes Hina's psychology, the dolls and the flowers. Early on, the enemies look like dolls. Hinako used to play with dolls. A doll is an object, of course. Something that only moves the way someone else wants. That's how Hinako sees herself. Controlled, possessed, decorative. It's also how her sister and her family treat her. As the game goes on, the dolls start to bloom. In the normal world, they grow death flowers, rotted, parasitic growths. In a dream state, they sprout sakura blossoms, the kind you associate with spring and renewal. And that's the trick. The rot and the bloom are the same thing, just seen from different versions. When you play as normal Hinako, you see the horror and the trauma. But when the perspective flips to Fox Hinako, the flowers turn beautiful. It's not that the world has changed, it's that she did. It's her mind repainting the same suffering as transcendence, convincing herself that surrender is rebirth. That single color shift from corpse flowers to cherry blossoms is the game's quiet way of showing how deep she sunk into the bargain. What she calls becoming beautiful is literally the infection finishing its work. And of course, Silent Hill F has more than one possible ending, but each is really just a different version of Hinako's psyche breaking or healing in its own way. The bad ending, the fox's wedding, shows total surrender. Hinako lets a ritual take her, merging fully with the infection and becoming a monstrous bride, and also where both the foxman and her partner become friends, which clearly tells you why this is the bad ending. Why is the partner getting cucked and liking it? But psychologically, this is the endpoint of identity loss, where the self gives up resting and becomes what the system wants. The good ending, the fox wets his tail, goes the other way. Hinako purifies the sacred sword and faces the gods directly. The same gods that demanded her sacrifice. That fight isn't really divine. It's symbolic of defying everything that told her who she had to be. She wins, but it's a lonely kind of victory. The true ending, Ebisugaoka in silence, is different. It's quiet. There's no boss fight, no bloom of gore, just two versions of Hinako meeting in calm, dreamlike space. The human self and the fox self finally talk, acknowledging what they've both been through. One was made to survive the pain, the other tried to deny it. Instead of fighting, they accept each other. This is what psychology calls integration, when fractured selves finally reconcile. After everything, the coercion, the rituals, the death of identity, she stops running from either versions of herself. The infection that once symbolizes control now becomes peace. It's not a happy ending, it's acceptance. The fox and the girl aren't enemies anymore, they're parts of the same whole. The self that submitted and a self that resisted finally understood why the other one existed, and in that stillness, Silent Hill F stops being a story about possession or punishment and becomes one about survival, about what it takes to make peace with the pieces of yourself you once thought were monsters. And that's Silent Hill F, a story about trauma, family pressure, and identity collapse, disguised as a horror game. And yeah, a girl gets possessed by a furry and fucking dies or whatever. Please like and subscribe. I've been recording for fucking hours. I'll touch some grass, I'm gonna go eat as well, I'm starving. And I'm gonna go before the foxman offers a deal to me as well. So yeah.
Man, I don't wanna talk your bitch.
So, in this video, I'll be using that background to fucking dare my fucking face. Things like, god damn it, in a small close community like Ebisugaoka fucking bitch. The mask isn't just creepy cosplay. In folklore, Max Verstappen show that both identities, obedient pride and fox-powered mask, annihilate. Fuck! And of course, Silent Hill F has more than one possible ending, but each is really just a different version of Hinako's psyche, or